Welcome again, everybody. We're going to talk today about Florida Bill 1718. I think it's been dubbed the immigration bill in most of the stuff that I've seen online regarding it. But essentially what we're here for is just a tiny portion of that bill, which has to do with the employer requirements for E-Verify for new employees in Florida. So that's me. I'm a real person. I'm alive. That's what I look like. Just real briefly before we get into it, I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. We have the question feature is open, but I can't answer specific questions relative to your specific situation online here today. Most importantly, because of the attorney-client privilege. When I took the oath at the Supreme Courts, I had to say that I would uphold the ethical rules, and one of those is attorney-client privilege. And here we have 20, 30 of us online, and there's no privilege with answering specific questions. That said, I will answer any general questions that pop up along the way. I'll try to look and decide. I'm not always the best at that, so sometimes Dan has to poke me and say, hey, there's some questions over there that you need to answer. Without further ado, we are going to get into it. So this is just a little bit of the roadmap of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about what the new law is. We're going to talk about some of the stick in terms of why you want to do it, why this is important. We're going to talk about some E-Verify basics, and intermixed in there, we're going to talk about some tricky topics that have come up, and at the end we'll also have time for questions should any of those pop up. So right off the bat, the new Florida law, Senate Bill 1718, it created a bunch of new laws and added new code and changed some of the code in Florida, and most importantly, the basics. Signed into law May 10th of this year. It has an effective date a couple months ago, almost 5 months ago now, of July 1, 2023. Now, there are a lot of provisions in here. Some of them had to do with hospitals. I think if you're a hospital and you get Medicare or Medicaid payments, you have to ask new patients in the emergency room or whatnot whether or not they're U.S. citizens, and you have to document all that stuff. Thankfully, we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the employment law angle of this new law. So what we have right here is we have a nice little Venn diagram. And what we're going to be talking about here is who has to comply. And we're going to talk about this little sweet spot right here, this little where everybody integrates here. So if you're a Florida employer and you hire a new employee and you have more than 25 new employees, you are required to, it is not optional to use E-Verify to vet those new employees to make sure and to ensure that they are legally qualified to work in the United States. So that covers most of you here, I'm sure. It's a pretty straightforward rule. There's no tricks or traps or anything goofy. It's pretty straightforward, and it's not all entirely new. So Florida law has required public employers, contractors, and subcontractors to participate in E-Verify since I think 2021. This new law just expands the participation requirement to private employers with more than 25 employees. And it's along, I don't know, there's probably about 8 to 10 states that require this as well. Tennessee, I know off the top of my head, Arizona, I believe. Colorado used to. They just repealed that law, so Colorado is off the books. I'm somewhat surprised that this hasn't passed at the federal level, especially when the Republicans held both branches of Congress and the presidency. But apparently it was not a priority, but I think that would have been a real easy thing for them to get past both houses. But political comments aside, here's why you care about this new law. Penalties for non-compliance. So effective this year already, knowingly hiring an undocumented worker will result in 1 year probation with a 1 year probation with the state, and that's double secret probation for those of you who are Animal House fans. It's going to require you to report quarterly to the state about your hiring efforts and prove that you've used E-Verify to vet all your new employees. And if you have 2 violations within 24 months, they're going to suspend your business licenses that have been issued by the state. So if you're a realtor or you have plumbing licenses or whatever your corporation or business does, if they need state business licenses, 2 violations in 24 months, you're going to lose those licenses, which I think is effectively going to shut down your business. Effective July 2024, so some of these provisions in the law were sunset's not the right word, but delayed in terms of their implementation, stay of imposition, if you will, to use the criminal parlance. So these penalties that are effective in July of next year are, if you don't use E-Verify 3 times within 24 months, you're going to get a $1,000 fine per day. In addition to that, they're also going to suspend your business licenses until you comply. So if we go back to that first slide, I'm not going to go back, but if you just remember, that slide was for hiring, knowingly hiring undocumented employees, essentially undocumented workers. The second one is, doesn't matter if they're documented or not, if they're completely legal to work in the US and you just didn't feel like using E-Verify, they don't, I mean, that's where the penalty comes. The penalty comes from not using E-Verify. You know, the person could be a Martian, they could be from China, they could be from, you know, Alaska, they could be completely legal to work and whatnot. If you don't use E-Verify, that's where they hit you with the hammer on this one. All right, basically the E-Verify process is insanely easy, believe it or not, especially compared to a lot of government, federal government stuff. You know, what was it that Ronald Reagan said, the scariest words are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Well, E-Verify is not that scary, at least as far as I'm concerned. I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty user-friendly, and you know, give the government a kudos on this one, because this one is pretty idiot-proof. So just real quick, you enroll in E-Verify. That means you set up your account with the government, and then from there you initiate a case, you hear what the government has to say, and you close the case. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. But of course, there's more detail than that. Nothing is ever that easy. So let's get into it. First step you need to do is enroll with the government if you haven't already. It's a pretty simple process. There's a checklist. I looked it up the other day. I think there's like 12 things you need to know, like crazy things like your company name and address. I think you need your EIN. But none of this is super classified information that you shouldn't be able to get fairly simply, or that you don't already have on hand. All this is done online through the E-Verify website. You set up your users, you read through a bunch of legal gobbledygook, and then you get to sign a memorandum of understanding. Finally, as an E-Verify participant, you get the privilege of posting 2 more workplace posters. One is a participation poster. It basically says, hey, we participate in E-Verify. I don't know the reasoning behind it. Is that to scare away people who, you know, might not be qualified or to work in the US or not. But in the infinite wisdom of the federal government, they said you get to post it, so you post it. Additionally, there's an employee rights poster that basically tells employees what their rights are regarding E-Verify process. As an aside, it's rather interesting because these are posted in your workplace, probably in your break room or something like that, and E-Verify applies to applicants. So I don't know how many applicants you guys have strolling through your break rooms or wherever you have your posters posted. So I question the efficacy of these posters, but be that as it may, the federal government says you have to post them, so you post them. All right, so you're enrolled in E-Verify. The next step is you have to initiate a case in E-Verify. That case must be initiated within 3 business days of the employee's start date. Start date, I guess we could delineate further by being the first date where they're paid. If there's some sort of voluntary start date where they take a tour or something and don't perform any work that's unpaid, that date doesn't count. Not a lot of employers I have actually do anything like that. You come in your first day, you start getting paid. So the case must be initiated through the online portal within 3 business days of the employee's start date. In order to do that, you need to complete the I-9. So I know you might be saying, hey, Nielsen, you said E-Verify is all online. It is. Unfortunately, you still have to complete the I-9 in order to do the E-Verify process. Number 1, because you have to keep a copy of the I-9 when you're done, but number 2, it actually makes your job a lot easier because it's then, once you have the I-9 filled out appropriately, you're going to have all the information you need to finish the online E-Verify case. So I think we're going to get a little into I-9s on the next slide. In fact, I know we are because I made this deck, so I should remember. So we'll put a pin on how we're going to complete the I-9 just a little bit. But step 3 here says obtain employee's social security number. Well, that's going to be right on the form I-9. If they don't give you the social security number, then you got problems. You can't complete the E-Verify, which means you can't hire them. There are some specific rules with E-Verify regarding documents. You'll see the point number 4 here, that you have to make copies of certain documents. And we'll get more into the ABC documents in a little bit, but a special rule of the E-Verify process is if during the process they give you either a passport, a US passport, I should say, a US passport card, a green card, or a DHS employee authorization document, EAD, you have to make a photocopy of those and keep them with the I-9 that's been completed. Now, this is different than regular I-9 rules. If you were not required to participate in E-Verify, say you're an employer that didn't have to participate until July 1 of this year, you had the choice of whether or not you were going to make copies of documents when employees submitted them to you for the I-9 process. You know, there's pros and cons to each one, but no longer do you have a choice if you get one of those 5 documents, or four documents. Can't count, so I went to law school. If you get one of those 4 documents, which are probably all going to be list A documents that we'll get into in a couple slides, you must make a copy of those. On the other hand, if an employee comes in with their driver's license and social security card, there's no photocopying requirement for those documents. So once you have the case initiated, you got the I-9 done, you got the social security number, and you got the documents, then you create an E-Verify case and you submit all that information through the E-Verify system for verification. It's pretty easy and intuitive. Again, for something created by the federal government, kudos. For those of you that have had to do ACA forms or tax forms, or had to do a voluntary compliance plan with the IRS for a company that messed up their 401k, this is easy mode. It's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. All right, I said we're going to talk about I-9s, so we're going to talk about I-9s. So here we're talking about list A documents, list B documents, list C documents. That's going to cover a little bit on the next page. But what you do is section 1, and this is where a lot of employers actually mess up. Section 1 of the I-9 has to be completed by the end of the first day of work of the employee. So section 1 is just the demographic information, name, address, telephone number, email address, social security number, stuff like that. This is not something you need the passport or driver's license or social security card or what have you for. This is all something that an employee should be able to fill out, 5-10 minutes tops. If they can't, then I have questions about your employee. It's real simple and real straightforward. But a lot of times this gets lost in the shuffle, and employers think, hey, you know what, this doesn't have to be done till day 3, so they don't do it all until the last day. Excuse me. I'm here to tell you that's a bad plan. You should have and make sure that section 1 of the I-9 is completed by the end of day 1. If they come in and audit you, DHS comes in and audits you, they can ding you for that. If they look at your I-9s and say, hey, this first section wasn't completed on time. And once they do that, then they can expand, they'll start to expand the scope. If they say, you're not doing this right, what else are you not doing correctly? So key point, make sure that section 1 is done by the end of the first day. The rest of the document, which is a new document, by the way, as of I think August 1st of this year, section 2, which used to be called section 3, has to be completed by the 3rd business day after the first day of work. So I think we call it the Thursday rule. If you've been around HR and compliance for a while, if you start on Monday, it's got to be done by Thursday. So we keep that rolling with the process done. We review their documents, and then you use that form to initiate your case and e-verify. Like I said, that policy or that form is going to have all the information that you need in order to do the e-verify case. So we talked about the list of acceptable documents. So there's list A documents, list B documents, list C documents, and so e-verify, just like I-9, you need either a list A document or a list B and a list C document. And this is where we get a lot of questions through our portal in terms of who is responsible, whether or not a card is actually appropriate or not, and whether or not this is an acceptable document either for list A, B, or C document. And I've seen some crazy things. I have yet to see a U.S. Coast Guard Merchant Mariner card. When I do, I think I'll retire. But I've seen a lot of these documents here. If another trick with the e-verify is if during that Form I-9 eligibility process, if the employee presents a document proving their identity from the list B list, which again is right here, these list B documents. If somebody presents a document from the list B documents proving their identity, you can only accept it if it has a photograph on it. So I've never seen a voter registration card, but I don't think those are required to have photographs. Military draft records, not going to have a photograph with it. Certain tribal documents don't have photographs on them, but most of these list B documents will have photographs on them. You get down to the bottom, 10, 11, and 12 are not going to have photographs with them most likely. So make sure that if an employee doesn't use a list A document and then instead use a list B and list C document, that those documents that they submit, the document they submit for list B does have a photograph with it. In regards to the documents, you are not required to be a document expert. In a former life in college and undergrad, I was a bouncer. I was pretty good at spotting fake IDs and whatnot from different states. You do not have to be that good. Your only job in reviewing these list A, B, and C documents is to determine whether or not they reasonably appear to be genuine and whether or not they relate to the person presenting them. So if your new employee gives you a document that you don't think appears to be genuine or doesn't relate to them, you have to reject that document and ask for other documents in order to satisfy the list of acceptable documents here to complete the I-9 form. So, let's say they give you a driver's license that had clearly, in your opinion, been altered. You're allowed to say, I don't think this is a valid ID, please present something else. Or if you don't think the photo matches, there are special rules with the I-9 with that, in terms of whether or not you don't think the photo matches. But if you don't think it's actually them, if I came in and I'm a Caucasian male, if I came in with a picture of a Filipino female on my driver's license, you can say I don't think that reasonably relates to you, and I think that's fine to do. Along the same lines with these documents, you don't get to choose which ones they provide. So if an applicant, or I guess no longer an applicant, a new employee comes in with a list with both a passport and a driver's license and social security card, you can't say, well, you got your passport, just give it to me that way, and then we don't have to do these two other documents. You don't get to choose. If the employee wants to give you their passport, they give you their passport. If the employee wants to give you their merchant mariner card and some Native American tribal document to establish work authorization, that's their purview. They can do that. You don't get to choose. If you try to choose or try to steer employees in terms of what documents they have to provide, other than what's required on this list, that's when you can get in trouble with the DHS in terms of discrimination and stuff. So you are document agnostic. All you want to do is make sure it fits on this list and whether or not it looks like them and reasonably relates to them. End of story. All right. So now, after our improvisational journey down I-9 land, once you submit that information, remember we created our case after getting the I-9 all filled out. What happens then is E-Verify gives us a response. And there's a couple different responses, and it's immediate. The online response is quick, and it indicates one of the following things. It either says, the employee is authorized to work. Great, you're done. Sometimes it says the DHS needs additional time to review its records. I've seen that. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen. Or a lot of times you'll get what's called a TNC, a tentative non-confirmation notice. And that tells you that either the SSA, Social Security Administration, or DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, that through their records, they can't confirm either their SSN or their employment authorization or something else. And then we get into the next slide, which is resolving tentative non-confirmations. So when you get this, right away you should print and review the action notice, the further action notice with the employee as soon as possible. I'd say no later than the end of the next business day once you get a TNC, faster if possible. Because once you get notice, you have to promptly inform that employee under the law. The next step is you confirm the accuracy of the employee's information on the further action notice, which you print out from E-Verify. Make sure that everything on there is up to snuff. And then with the employee sitting there, you want to ask the employee if they will contest the TNC. And you indicate whether or not they're going to contest the TNC or not on page 2 of the further action notice, and together with the employee sign the further action notice. So even though this is all theoretically online and super fast and reliable, there's still, unfortunately, paperwork for you to do. So once the employee has read and reviewed and signed the further action notice, you make a copy of that further action notice and send it along with the employee, and you keep that further action notice and attach it to the Form I-9 that you have filled out that you use to create the case in E-Verify. While that employee is still there, again, it's important to note in the E-Verify system whether or not they're going to contest or not contest the TNC. Again, because if they choose to contest it, you get the further action notice that you have to print out. If the employee chooses not to contest the TNC, basically all you do then at that point is you close the case in E-Verify. The E-Verify system will show that the TNC will convert to an FNC, which is a final non-confirmation. And at that point, we'll talk about it on this slide. So resolving the TNC. When an employee chooses to contest that TNC, it means that the employee is either going to visit a Social Security field office or have to call DHS. They have 8 federal government working days to initiate that contact with the appropriate federal agency. Your E-Verify will magically update to show case and continuance for an employee that has taken the proper steps to resolve the TNC. That is, if they've gone to the Social Security field office or if they've contacted DHS regarding their employment authorization. During this time, it is important to note that you can't terminate, suspend, delay training, withhold or lower pay, or take any other adverse action against an employee because of the mismatch until the mismatch becomes a final non-confirmation. We had a client the other day who they do staffing in the Southeast, and one of their employees had a TNC, and the employee's client says, we can't accept them, they have a TNC, you have to fire them. At which point they contacted me and I said, no, that's not true and also not legal. I just pulled up a case in researching it besides the chapter and verse where last year DOL cracked down on a staffing agency for doing the same thing. You can't, again, take any adverse action while the person is contesting a TNC. So while that person may ultimately not be authorized to work in the US and theoretically is working illegally, even though they have a TNC, you have protection from that because you used E-Verify and they are using their due process rights to challenge the TNC. So if it comes back that that person who got a TNC is actually not authorized to work in the US, and you allowed them to work, you're not going to face any penalties for that because you did what you were required to do under law, which is allow them to contest that TNC. Okay. If after you followed the steps that we talked about on the previous slide and you've notified the employee and the employee does not tell you about their decision right away, they theoretically have up to 10 business days to contest the TNC. If they don't get back to you within those 10 business days, you can basically consider this case an FNC, a final non-confirmation. At that point, you can close the case and E-Verify, and the employer, you can terminate the employment based upon the result not to contest. Similarly, it's a lot easier if they tell you right away when you say, hey, we got a TNC, what do you want to do? They say, well, I'm not going to contest it. At that point, you are free and probably should immediately terminate that employee's employment because they are not authorized to work in the U.S. and you're continuing to employ them, place them, and pay them would put you in violation of the Immigration Control and Reform Act of, I don't know, 1983, I think it is. So pretty simple, and I like it when they say I'm not going to contest it, because then it's a pretty easy decision just to terminate, and you face no liability for doing so. You will see sometimes where the confirmation comes back and you say, I'm going to hire this person anyways, and I'm going to go ahead and continue their employment even after you get an FNC. That is a terrible decision, in my opinion. You are basically telling the police, for lack of a better word, that you're going to commit a crime and that you are currently committing it. Because hiring and maintaining employment of people who are not authorized to work in the United States contains both civil and criminal penalties. And so don't do it. Don't continue to employ someone who is not authorized through E-Verify. Once you get the final response from DHS or SSA, actually it's all through E-Verify, so it doesn't matter who it's from, that the TNC has been resolved one way or another. At that point, you have to close the case, and that's pretty easy. And voila, you guys have completed the E-Verify process and navigated through slightly more difficult process than just completing the I-9, but it also gives you the peace of mind and the verification, I guess, I can't think of the right word right now, confirmation, I guess, from the federal government that this person is allowed to continue to work for you under the immigration laws. Just a little bit about us. myHRcounsel, we've been around since 2015, providing HR and employment law advice and benefit law advice too on health and welfare benefit plans. Through signing up, if you want to subscribe, you receive unlimited HR advice, HR law and employment law policies, legally compliant handbooks, and for those of you who haven't been paying attention, the NLRB has really messed with employee handbooks this year. A decision came down on August 2nd, I believe it was August 2nd, early August, called the Stericycle case. If you look up the Stericycle case, you'll see that they basically have invalidated employee handbooks that have been good for a long time. So there's at least 5 different traps that will invalidate your employee handbook. For those of you who want more information, there's the email link. There's also a sign up. There's a landing page if you guys wanted to sign up. I believe the deal was, let me just pull up my email. The deal was $39 a month for the first 3 months, and then $1.29 per employee per month, with a minimum of $129 monthly for the remainder of 12 months. I think as an added bonus, Mark let me do this, so I'm going to do it. Those of you who attended the webinar today, I think you get a free month if you sign up for the 12 months. So you'll get December for free if you sign up, for those of you that have attended the webinar today. And what else? I got some more information here too, I think. Here we go. Once again, contact page here for you guys. And there's our email. There's a link if you want to go to the landing page to sign up for the deal for Absolute Payroll. And finally, there is our regular homepage there on the bottom if you want to peruse us and learn more about our services. So I'm going to look here. I actually got some questions that I missed. Posters, the E-Verify posters is the first question I see here. Those are all available online through the DHS system. I believe it's through DHS, but it's those are all federal posters, and they're all available online, and they're all available for free. Let's look. Question about the package information via email. Is that, sorry, Denise, is that, not to call you out, is that the question about signing up, the package that you get for signing up for myHRcounsel? If so, I believe Dan can put that information in the email that goes out tomorrow in terms of the deal I just offered, for where you get December for free, as well as the $39 a month, and then the $129 PEPM after that. All right, I don't see any more questions. I don't know if Drew or Mark, you wanted to jump on and say anything about today's presentation or about any services, but I'll sit here for another couple minutes to see if any questions pop up.
That was definitely
Hello,
informative,
everyone.
so
This
thank
is
you.
Drew. I am thankful that you were able to attend today, and appreciate your presentation, Andrew from myHRcounsel. We're very excited to be able to bring this resource to our clients. I think I just heard you say that they're going to get a free month of attorney access for December, if I heard that correctly. And then some very reasonable service charges after that if you continue. This is a great resource for you to answer any of the legal questions regarding client specific type questions. And I encourage you to at least take them up on that as very generous. And I appreciate that very much. I appreciate your time presenting today. And with the fines coming up starting in 2024, we certainly have all learned our processes over the last few months here since July. And it seems to have moved along quite efficiently. If we can help any of you with any of those efficiencies with our onboarding as well, feel free to reach out to us. And it's great to have a legal team on your side for any specific questions. And once again, I'm very blessed to hear that you're getting an opportunity to try that out for 30 days. Please take them up on that. That's amazing. Thank you. Matt, do you have anything?
No, I can't really add much to that. I do know the posters were mailed. If anybody has any of those questions, we did mail. Anybody enrolled in E-Verify was mailed those posters. So if you have any questions, you can email me directly and we can figure that out as well. We can direct you where you can download them as well.